So it looks like we're stuck at 10 for now. So I guess we can go ahead and get started. So as I'm assuming you know, since you're here, we're here to talk about chemical engineering. My name is Jake. I'm a junior chemical engineering student at RPI, and you just heard from me if you were in the first session.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily and I'm a senior studying chemical engineering here at RPI.
All right, so let's get started then. So one of the great things about RPI is like I kind of mentioned, is there's a wide variety of coursework and some great hands-on lab classes that will really prepare you for the professional world. So that's kind of one of the hallmarks of any engineering major you'll have at RPI, but just specifically for chemical engineering, like I'll mention on the next slide, there's a lot of curriculum that really prepares you for the real world, whether it's a chemistry lab class. We have a series of professional development classes that we take as engineers. So that's just kind of a general theme throughout all of this is that there's a lot of hands-on work that will kind of really prepare you for the real world more than you think you might be ready for it. Like I know when I came in as a freshman, I was like really nervous and kind of overwhelmed by like people only a few years older than me that were getting jobs at great companies and things like that. But you learn very quickly. So first we'll start by talking about the curriculum for chemical engineering. So I'm not sure how well you can see this slide here, but this is the curriculum, and you can find this online too if you search like RPI chemical engineering curriculum, if you want to see this in the future. But one of the main things about the curriculum is for the first 2 years, you'll just be taking mostly basic math and science classes. Like you'll take chemistry 1, physics 1 and 2, calculus 1 and 2, biology, a lot of those kinds of classes your freshman year. And then once you get into your sophomore year, you'll start chemical engineering specific courses. So one of the first chemical engineering course you'll take is called MEBL, but there's acronyms for everything at RPI, as you will learn. But material, energy, and entropy balances is what it's called. And it's kind of the foundation of a lot of chemical engineering. You'll also take that thermodynamics class, Triple E, like I mentioned in my previous session. Um, and then as you move into your senior year, you'll take both more advanced chemistry and chemical engineering classes, and then you'll have room to kind of specialize your education a little bit more. So in your third year, you've already taken organic chemistry your sophomore year, and then you'll take a couple more advanced chemistry classes, including a big lab class called Modern Techniques in Chemistry. And then you'll take some more classes that talk about chemical processes and separations and kind of more intricacies of like how a chemical plant works. And then in your senior year, you'll culminate by taking, and Emily can speak a little bit more to this because I haven't taken these yet. But you have a senior lab that you'll take both your first and second semester of senior year, and then you have a capstone project at the end of your senior year where you kind of work to design your own chemical process for whatever you want in a group. And so, like I kind of mentioned before, you don't choose a concentration in chemical engineering. Some other majors have like specific things that you can hone in on. But like I mentioned in the previous session, you can really specialize your interest through electives. So you have 3 electives, engineering electives, and chemical engineering electives. So right now I'm taking a class, my chemical engineering elective is with a professor you'll see on the next slide, but it's called chromatography processes.
Me
So it's like,
too.
are you in that? That's
Yeah.
right. So we can talk about that. But it's kind of like a Uber specific sort of separation mechanism. If you've ever seen like if in high school you ever did a chromatography of like pigments in a leaf, you know what I mean? That's kind of a similar concept to what this is. It's basically like generating these graphs of separating chemicals based on certain properties. But this professor that teaches that is like super renowned in that field. And that's what you'll find with all the electives you take at RPI. Like I've taken a computer music class where this guy is like, he worked for Smule, the company that made the Magic Piano app, if anyone knows that. Like, and I took an economics class last semester where the professor had written a lot of the kind of defining papers in the field that he was showing us. So you can kind of pick and choose classes you want based on your interest, and you'll find professors that are really, really good at what they're teaching in those more specific classes. So to kind of touch on that, here's a few of the professors in the chemical engineering department. There's probably about 15 or 20, I would say, in total. But that's Professor Kramer. He's the one that teaches chromatography. Professor Beckett I had last semester for chemical process dynamics and control. So he works a lot with just the way that I'm going to repeat myself, but just the way that you control chemical processes, like different techniques and methods for kind of fine tuning things and adjusting things if things are going wrong in a chemical process, I guess.
Yeah, it's actually really important in chemical engineering.
Yeah, it's kind of like the troubleshooting of chemical
Yeah,
engineering, so that's how to explain it. Um, Professor Koffes I've never had actually, but do you know what he teaches specifically?
yeah, he taught control lab for me too. But I
Okay.
know that he has like really important research happening right now that's like funded by like the NIH or like the NFS.
Uh,
So he has like a bunch of publications out in that field, and he also has like 10 patents or something like that. So like if you want to join research, he has some cool stuff going on.
Yeah, for sure. And I
Mhm.
know Professor Kramer also has some
Yeah.
cool research going on, and he's published a lot of papers. And then Professor Garde is actually the dean of the School of Engineering. So he used to be the head of the Department of Chemical Engineering, but now he's the dean of the whole School of Engineering.
Hmm.
So those are just a few of the professors that you'll meet.
Yeah, so as for the chemical engineering department and some activities that we have, here are just some that are specifically geared towards chemical engineers. The first one being the RPI ChemiCar team. And this ChemiCar team is basically like the design team for chemical engineers. We work to make a design that's controlled and powered by chemical reactions, and we do that in a student-run lab. So being like a previous team captain for this club, I highly recommend it if you're like a freshman coming here and you're looking to get some hands-on lab experience to join ChemiCar, because you don't have to have any prerequisites, you don't need anything, you can just join and start having input in a lab. As for some other activities, we have the American Institute of Chemical Engineers, and that's basically like our networking club. So I used to be president. I think Jake used to be vice president. You
Still
are
vice
still vice
president.
president? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, at AICI, it's basically like us as upperclassmen, we try to provide the best networking capabilities for the underclassmen. And we do that by, bringing companies to speak about jobs that they have that they're looking for RPI chemical engineering students. We bring professors to speak about their research if you want to maybe hop on that. And we also bring like professional development activities, which include like resume workshops, interview practice, and stuff like that. So lastly, there's engineering ambassadors. That's not chemical engineering specific, but that's what me and Jake both are. And what we do there is basically try to provide STEM education to schools and younger audiences. So if you're kind of passionate about sharing STEM and getting some presentation experience while you're at it, join engineering ambassadors. So I guess we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the chemical engineering student experience as well. As a chemical engineer, we have a lot of heavy and demanding coursework. It's like really hard. Like the teachers, I feel like sometimes they want to screw us over, but because of that, the teachers and the students both understand that our work is hard, and we have the Ricketts Lounge. So our building is the Ricketts building. Only chemical engineers go in there. Nobody else ever steps foot in there. But we kind of own that building. Our RPI Chemi Car Lab is also in that building. And what we have there is the Coonley Lounge, which is like this lounge that a lot of chemical engineering students go and do homework. And then what's really great about it is that the professors' offices are in that lounge. So if you're doing homework with maybe other students, you'll figure out maybe you have an issue or something. You can always just hop into their office and be like, "Hey, I don't really understand what's going on," and they'll help you, and then you can get back to work. So obviously during COVID times, that's not open, but hopefully by the time you guys are graduating, you've had some experiences in Coley Lounge. But yeah, overall, it's a very collaborative environment. So ask your friends, ask your teachers for help if you need any. So as for like careers in chemical engineering, chemical engineers work in almost all industries. Like when I'm telling you, if it's a product, a chemical engineer probably touched it at some point. You can work in, developing some sort of polymer synthetic materials that are like water resistant, or, coating for like a plane or something like that. You can work in developing petroleum, gas, jet fuels. You can work in developing pharmaceuticals, biotherapeutics, even water purification. Like literally, the industries are endless. Obviously, you can work in chemical development, like for things like hand sanitizer, um, cleaners, dish soap, anything like that. So because you have endless careers, you have a lot of like industries that you can look at and really specify what your real interests are. So, like I said, for some careers for or job opportunities for chemical engineers at RPI, our career fair is really big, and we have a lot of big companies that come here. These are just some of them that are listed, but we have a lot of connections with companies like UTC and Raytheon Technologies and stuff like that. And like I said before, chemical engineers work in almost every industry. So that means that probably 70% of those companies there are probably hiring some sort of chemical engineer, honestly. So another thing that's really good about our PI is our handshake portal, which is like our job board or like an Indeed, but only for RPI students. And a lot of companies that are looking for RPI students for their jobs post their jobs on Handshake. So it kind of limits the competition and like makes it easier. I've known a lot of people that get interviews and jobs from Handshake or our previous job board. So overall, talking about opportunities, I just wanted to share, one of my experiences. Like I said, chemical engineers can work in a multitude of industries, and I worked, or my interests personally are in biotherapeutics. So I worked at Regeneron. I worked as a formulation development co-op. So a little bit about what I did. Um, a formulation is basically the substance that carries a drug product to make sure that it can make it to a patient. So a lot of biotherapeutics are based off of proteins or antibodies, and these proteins and antibodies are not stable on their own, especially if they're going to be transported, if they're going to be like shaken up, if they're going to be in a manufacturing process, they're not going to survive. So we need to make sure that there's some sort of chemical composition there that maintains pH, maintains stability of the protein, and make sure that that protein can make it to the patient. So that's basically what I did. There's a lot of hands-on work, a lot of research, a lot of stability studies, and then reporting that back to the department and actually applying that research to the FDA approval of that drug. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. You guys have any questions about chemical engineering?
Yeah, so one question so far from David that had asked at the beginning what the curriculum looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we kind of talked a little bit about that after that, but if you had any other specific questions about the curriculum, we'd be happy to answer that. Yeah, and I guess I should mention too, I have not, so I'm a junior, Emily's a senior.
Mm-hmm.
So I have not actually had an internship yet, but I did have one last summer that was canceled due to COVID, unfortunately. And then this summer I'm going to be working at a company called Sabic in the capital region, and their plant, um, they manufacture this like very specific plastic that is the only place in the world that they make this specific plastic that's used in a couple like niche applications, but it's just like kind of a big traditional chemical plant. So it'll be fun to see just like, I think it'll be a good experience to kind
Mm-hmm.
of help me out with anything else I decide to do in manufacturing.
Yeah, Sabic is like very good for getting that good experience in like an overall like process engineering chemical like plant position. Um, for the Arch program, I didn't do the Arch program. I don't know if Jake did it.
Yeah, so we both, let's see, did you enjoy the Arch program? It's very helpful. Oh, okay. All right, so Lily asked, how was your experience with the Arch? And then Hayden asked, did you enjoy the Arch program and find it helpful? So to be honest, I think a lot of RPI students are kind of not thrilled about the Arch program. I'm sure you'll hear more about that. But just from my experience, Emily, you probably had a similar experience, I think. But I was a little bit ahead of, like, I came in with a bunch of AP credits. So, like,
Mhm.
I took physics, I took calculus, and chemistry and bio in high school. So I kind of had a semester worth of credits already under my belt.
Mhm.
Um, so ideally, what I was initially thinking was that I'd only need to be here for 7 semesters. And this is confusing. No one understands this, but I was thinking I'd only need to be here for 7 semesters, but due to the structure of the curriculum, I couldn't graduate early because there's certain like that capstone class you have to take in
Mhm.
this. So I was thinking that I would be able to take the summer off and my semester off, where a lot of arch people have to take classes over the summer to have that semester off. So I was able to get exempt from the program because I still had that sort of window of a semester without having to take classes over the summer. So over the summer, which is when COVID hit, so what would have been when a lot of my peers were taking the summer classes, I would have had that internship that I was talking about that got canceled. And then Sabic actually, because of their COVID restrictions, they weren't hiring people for this current semester. This was supposed to be my semester off. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to get Sabic over the summer, and right now I'm taking a bunch of electives. I'm taking a computer science class, like the basic class that computer science majors take. I'm taking a sociology class. I'm taking a class called engineering economics, and I'm taking that chromatography class. I'm kind of finishing up all my electives this
Mm-hmm.
semester in place of that experience, just because it was a little different with
Mm-hmm.
COVID.
So Meredith asked, what's the best part about being a chemical engineer at RPI? I would say it's probably the relationship that you have with your professors. Over the coursework, you get to take a lot of classes, especially design classes, over with the same professors over and over again, and you start building that relationship so that you're really comfortable, just going to them and asking for help, or even developing or asking about like what jobs they have, or if they have any connections, or if they know anything about research or anything like that. I think that the professors are very they make the coursework really hard, but they also really want to help you. Like they want you to know what you're doing when you leave here. So feel like that's probably the best part for me, at least.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I
Mhm.
think it's I mean, not really just about at RPI, but there's so many different things that you can do with chemical engineering. Like when I first came to college, I really, like I've mentioned, I really had no idea what I was getting. Oh, I like chemistry. I want to do something with
Mhm.
it. But it's really so much more than chemistry, like I tried to mention in the beginning session. Like I said, I'm going to work in a big plastics manufacturing plant. And I didn't necessarily realize that that was chemical engineering. Before I came in here, like I was like, oh, I'm going to be doing chemistry in a lab. But yeah, it's very different. You can do so many different things with it. Like
Yeah.
Emily worked in like biopharmaceuticals
Mhm.
over her summer. And you could work in, I don't know, we've had people come talk to us for AICI, that club that Emily used to be the president of, and I'm the vice president of, where we hear from people from industry. There's people that have talked to us that have done engineering education and now they work for Wall Street. Or there was someone that works for a local company that makes hydrogen fuel cells. That's a
Mhm.
chemical engineer. Um, and you'll take a class called Intro to Chemical Engineering. You'll take a little seminar your freshman year to hear similar experiences like that, and you'll see there's like a wide variety of things you can do. So I think that's like a really cool part of it for me, and that I've been able to take classes that kind of expose me to a lot of different areas and a lot of
Mhm.
different. All right, let's see. All right, let's take. So I'll just go. All right, so David is next. So some chemical engineering colleges require physical chemistry 1 and 2 with lab during sophomore year. So
Um,
physical chemistry 1 is
you mean microscopic physical chemistry?
so physical chemistry 1, I'm pretty sure, is macroscopic
Mhm.
physical chemistry, which is very similar to that thermodynamics class that I was
Mhm.
talking about. So just because I know this from, so we have a class called microscopic physical chemistry, which I'm pretty sure is like physical chemistry 2 in most other
You only have to take
colleges.
one.
Sorry?
You only have to take one of them, right?
Yes, but like the other one is very similar to Triple E, which is another class we take.
Mhm.
So we take like what's kind of similar to physical chemistry 1 and thermodynamics during our sophomore year, but we don't actually have a lab for it. It's more of like a project-based
Mhm.
class, like I was mentioning. And then we do take like microscopic physical chemistry, which is not a lab class either. It's just a very like
Just concepts.
honestly, to be honest, it was like my least favorite class I've taken. But yeah, it's a lot more like just memorization of
Yeah,
things.
and I
That's
personally
just
felt like it didn't apply much.
yeah, it
Not in
really does.
present day chemical engineering, but we have to take it.
Yeah.
At least we only have to take one.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Next. What did you skip the question?
No, I just added it to the chat. I just
Oh,
I know, and then you have to go back and
okay,
read
okay.
it.
I was so confused. Are there
Okay.
any non-chemi clubs that either of you are involved in? If so, how are you managing those clubs with your courses? Of me, I guess engineering ambassadors, it's not really a chemi club, like it's for all engineers. Um, and I personally, I think, was just involved in chemi clubs. Uh, I don't know about you, Jake. I used to be involved in SWE. I think managing clubs and coursework is pretty manageable. Like, I think that it's up to how much work you want to put in the club. So, yeah, you can join a ton of clubs, but you probably won't have like a large impact if you're joining a ton of clubs. So it's up to you. Like, I was a SWE member, but I wasn't a board member. I used to be part of the outreach committee and I used to help them develop like their programs for girls when they would bring them in to learn about engineering and stuff like that. But I focused like my efforts in like clubs like Chemicar and Aki. So it's up to you really. Like if you want to be involved in a bunch of clubs, um, you can. But I recommend focusing your efforts in one or two clubs, and then if you want to just visit the other ones, then that's up to you.
Yeah, I definitely I'm kind of the person where I like to join a lot of things and I like to say yes to everything. But I've realized that as my classes have gotten harder, I've kind of had to limit what I've done. Like I know before COVID hit, I played the violin and I played the violin for probably 10 or 12 years. So I was in the orchestra at RPI and I really liked it a lot. And I was also in a club called Ignite where we drum on trash cans. It was a lot of fun and I met a lot of my good friends from that club. But it got to be a lot. Like my second semester, sophomore year, like right before COVID hit, I was like really busy with these things, and I was already thinking about like, oh man, I don't know how I'm gonna have time for orchestra next year. But then since COVID hit, conveniently I haven't had to do those anyway, just because we don't have the opportunity to like play in person. So in some ways, it was kind of nice because then I took on a bigger role with like engineering ambassadors. In the fall semester, I was our operations coordinator. So I was kind of in charge of it was almost like the secretary, sort of like I sent out meeting links and took attendance, and I was in charge of the social media. That's why I linked the EA Instagram in the last one. But and then I'm also involved with Aki too. So those are kind of the two things I'm involved with now. But I definitely agree with Emily that the more you get involved in, the less of an impact you can have
Mhm.
on things you are involved in. So that David asked me, Jake, what did you think about skipping classes with AP credit? Was it hard in higher level subjects? And that's a good
Do
question.
it.
Huh?
Do it. Save
Yeah,
your
I
money.
agree. I had the same question as you
Me
coming in. I
too.
remember asking people like,
Mhm.
oh, should I like skip right ahead to, um, yeah, I didn't really have too much of a problem with it.
I
Um,
almost I this is like different, but like I almost took math again because what I did for Calc 2 was just take the exam. I didn't really take the class. And then I came here and I was like, oh my God, do I know enough? Like these kids are gonna know so much more and I'm gonna be behind. And then I remember like one of the TAs or RAs and like my building was like, no, just take it. Like take the credit, save your
yeah,
money. And that's what
I
I
agree.
did too. You'll be fine. You'll figure it out. I skipped Calc 1, Calc 2, and Physics 1 and Physics 2, and I was fine. We don't take physics again, um, ever, barely.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Um,
I skipped bio, chem, calc 1 and physics 1, but then I
mhm,
took calc 2 and physics 2 here. And I didn't really have well, physics 2, like my physics class in high school, um, we learned a little bit of the physics 2 material, even though I didn't get credit for it. So I was already sort of familiar with the material, and I will say that it was definitely a step up from what I had done in high school, but I
mhm,
didn't really have too much of a problem with it. So I would just say in general, I would go for it, take the credit, and
mhm,
then, if you really find yourself struggling, it's really not hard to drop the class and pick up
mhm.
the one you want to take again. So that would be my advice. And then Aiden's asking, what kind of opportunities are there involving the environment and sustainability in the chemical engineering program? That's a great question. That's something I'm very interested in myself. Like I mentioned in the last session, I've always been interested in renewable energy. Um, kind of, um, when I came to RPI, I kind of like forgot about that. Not forgot about it, but I was like, oh, well, I'm not sure if I'll end up doing that because there's so much else I could do. But now that I'm kind of getting a little more focused, it's might be something that I want to end up pursuing. And you can certainly take classes in environmental engineering if you're interested in doing that. I haven't done that specifically, but I'm taking a class now called Environment and Society that kind of talks about the social aspect of a lot of these issues. And there's certainly I think the environment comes up in a lot of things we have in our chemical engineering classes too. Like there's definitely a lot of that consideration. Like I think the old school chemical engineering, as you'll
Mhm.
find, is like petroleum and coal processing, but that's really kind of not what so a lot of the problems in our classes are kind of framed like that, but then they'll be spun in a way that's a lot more modern. And we do definitely like talk about sustainability a lot in our classes. I think it comes
Yeah.
up.
I was just gonna say that a lot of your design projects, especially in capstone, which is the chemical process design class, they really stress green engineering. So for your design, they make sure that you have methods that allow your plant to be self-sustainable. And that's something that they're just teaching in chemical engineering nowadays because we want to work towards fixing the issue, not adding to it.
Yeah, and I'll add too, I just thought of this and I think I mentioned this earlier, but there's a class that I took last semester. I'm home now, remote, but last semester I was on campus and I took a lab class called Modern Techniques in Chemistry. And we spent
Mhm.
the big project of that class was like a biodiesel experiment, which was a lot of fun. I enjoyed. But so we did a whole, couple week long lab about turning vegetable oil and what else was that? I think it was vegetable oil and methanol, and you reacted it to form a biodiesel and like a byproduct that gets used in like soap or whatever. I forget what that's called. But then we had to write a whole paper about like researching biodiesel and talking about what we learned from the experiment. So that was really cool. Like that was kind of a different sustainable thing that I didn't really know all that much about.
Mhm.
That was like a big part of a class that I took recently. All right, I think that's all the questions we have as of right now. Does anyone have any more questions? We have about 10 more minutes for this session, so feel free to ask away. All right, Lily asks, what specifically stood out to you that made you choose RPI? Do you want to go first with this one?
Yeah, I I am a person that likes to be engine RPI is based on engineering. Like we don't have to take writing courses, we don't have to take English, we don't have to take any sort of course like that. So for me that was appealing because I didn't want to take any courses like that. I just wanted to do engineering coursework because those were my interests. But that's probably what made it stand out for me. Also, the pay for RPI graduates. Um, a lot of RPI graduates turn out with pretty good pay for their entry level job. And that's just because of our research, the fact that a lot of kids get internships, and the fact that a lot of companies are just looking for RPI students. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that was, I toured a bunch of different schools and I applied to like, I don't know, 10 or
Mhm.
15 schools. And definitely what stood out to me about RPI was that there was a big focus on engineering. Like
Yeah.
so many other schools I went to is like, oh, look at our wonderful liberal arts program. Oh, and we have an engineering school. You know what I mean? And, RPI, that's the whole main focus of it. So I definitely agree that that was appealing to
You
me.
breathe engineering.
Yes, yeah. And everyone kind of has one thing I like about RPI too is it's a very collaborative atmosphere here for the most part. I think a lot of other like I don't know, slightly more prestigious schools that I had toured or heard about, um, it just seemed like there's a little bit more competitive nature that doesn't really exist here. Like no one, everyone knows that like we're all in this together. We have a lot of team projects, and I don't know, maybe because it's definitely a very good school, but
Mhm.
it's just below that sort of like elite school where
Yeah.
you don't get that sort of snobby competitive
Mhm.
atmosphere. That's something that I've really enjoyed about it.
Yeah, but you still get like those really like smart kids though. Like
Yeah, I mean, definitely everyone that comes
a
here
lot
is
of
very,
people that come here probably made it into an Ivy League school, but just got more money from RPI.
yeah, for sure.
So it's like we have that like level of educated people, but without all of that Ivy League, you know, BS.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And one thing I like too is I toured a couple other schools that were like super closed off, and RPI kind of sprawls out into the neighborhood. And I mean,
Mhm.
Troy is not the greatest place on earth, but I kind of like Troy. I mean, it's a
Got
fun place
character.
to live. What was that?
Got character.
Yeah, right. But I don't know. Troy's kind of a fun little college town if you go in the right parts of it.
Mhm.
But and I like too how people live all around town and it kind of blends in. Like last semester I lived off campus and I lived probably just as far from the class part of campus as I did when I lived on campus the year
Mhm.
before.
Same.
Um, yeah, because it's a kind of a pretty small area where all the classes are, but
Mhm.
then where people live both on and off campus is really kind of sprawling out, so it kind of blends in with the neighborhood around it, which is kind of cool.
Somebody asked,
But
how are the dorms? Um, let's see, 2 years ago. The dorms they're like dorms. Like they're pretty like basic, I guess. One thing is that all of the freshmen or most of the freshmen are put into the same like area. It's called Freshman Hill. And there's a lot of like, you know, communicating there. Like a lot of friends are made there because everybody's just together. I wasn't on Freshman Hill, but I've heard about it. Other than that, I think they're good. Like I think they're just dorms. Like I don't have anything crazy to say about them.
yeah, they're okay. I lived in a building called Bar H, which is
Oh,
another acronym for Debt Avenue Residence Hall. It stands
you
for,
guys had
and
food.
what was that?
You guys
Sorry.
had food.
Oh yeah, we did have food. We had a dining hall in my building, which was really nice. But this building, um, it's probably the biggest, or actually, it's probably the second biggest freshman dorm because there's Barton, which is one of the Freshman Hill
Mhm,
ones, which is also really big. But it's like 3 minutes away from Freshman Hill, so it's really not that far away. But
mhm,
it's kind of, we were kind of out on our own little island. But I really found that there was a big sort of community that was formed
mhm,
within the building. Like
mhm,
a lot of people, and there were probably 300 people that lived in that building. But everyone got to know each other for the most
mhm.
part, and there were a lot of a big reason why everyone got to know each other in that building was because there was a dining hall right in the building,
Exactly. Yeah.
and we lived in my year. They packed in this building. There's all like suites. So, and that's another thing about the dorms. They're not that big, but
Mhm,
it'll be fine. And so I actually lived in a room with two other people, and we shared a tiny little bathroom with another room of three people. So there were six of us, and it was probably like, I don't know, 500 square feet. It was small enough that we couldn't fit beds and desks without bunking them. So like I was on a bunk over someone else, and then there was another lofted bed over a desk, and then the other two desks, and that was like all the wall space in the room. But after that, like that was it was kind of fun, but it was small. But then after that, where I lived sophomore year, which was also on campus, was a lot bigger. It was like almost like a little apartment. Like there's
You
like a
live
downstairs and an upstairs to where I lived in
Oh,
Rex.
right. Oh, lucky.
Yeah, so they're not too bad.
Yeah.
They're all right.
Yeah, as a second year, if you fill out the form first, you have the opportunity of getting kind of like an apartment style dorm. Um, a lot of kids get that. I was in a Blitman, which was like still a room, but we had a bathroom, so it wasn't that bad. It's not like we were cooking anyways. Um, but yeah, some
Yeah,
of the
Blitman actually used to be a hotel. Like
yeah,
I
no,
think,
Blitman was really nice.
yeah, it
It's
was
super
pretty
clean, and
nice.
we had a dining hall there, so like we really had all the necessities.
Yeah, and I had a lot of room in mine wraps, but
Mm.
it was kind of like it wasn't the greatest quality, but there was like so much space that it was well worth
Mhm.
it. Like it was, I don't know, probably 5 times the size where I lived freshman year. And then, so I'll mention too, and you may have heard this already, but you have to live on campus for your first like 5 semesters, your first 2 years, and then your arch semester if you do stay for the arch. And then you can live off campus. So last year I lived in an apartment. Like I said, that was actually pretty close to campus, and it was just like in an old building.
Mhm.
And this coming year, I'm living in a bigger, like kind of new apartment complex that they built, Tech Terrace.
Mm.
There's kind of a combination for off-campus housing of like older buildings that have been turned into student apartments and
Mhm.
like these big new complexes. So you can
Yeah.
kind of pick and choose.
Yeah. Um, any final questions before the session ends? Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Hopefully you learned something. All right, I think we're pretty much all set.
All
So I
right.
think you have a new link for the second session.